Hi, and welcome to another episode of From the Heart Conversations with Yoga Girl. This week, I have a super exciting guest and very talented artist on the show, Chris Burkard. Chris is a self-taught photographer, creative director, author, speaker, and world explorer from California who's gained huge recognition through the past years for his amazing ability to capture awe-inspiring beauty of nature. Known for his surf photography and travels to the most remote parts of the world, you've probably seen Chris's work on the cover of magazines, or you might be one of the millions of people who already follow him in social media. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Thank you so much for having me, Rachel. I really appreciate it, and I'm so psyched to be here. It's a kind of a long time coming. You know, it's funny. You and I have crossed paths in a lot of different ways over the years, and this is super cool to finally be able to connect with you like this.
I know, it's so much fun. You know, actually, I have one of my yoga teachers here at the studio that we have in Aruba. She's told me, in her own words, your biggest fan in the entire world. She's outside this door right now, like peeing her pants that you're on the show. She's so excited. And when I put it out in social media that you were coming on the show, I just literally got thousands of emails and messages from people, you know, that are so excited. It's a really cool thing to have you on the show.
Yeah, well, I had the chance to check out a couple of the podcasts, and I really love how you've transitioned your work into obviously being an excellent yoga teacher and such a, you know, just a mindful steward, you know, of yoga, but also just the conversations are really heartfelt, and it's funny to say that, and really thought-provoking. And I love that. I love how you've kind of been able to be such an entrepreneur in that field. It's been really cool. You know, last time I saw you was in Pismo Beach at a yoga workshop, and I was also blown away with just how
What year was that? That was a long time ago.
That was like 3 years ago, I think, or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's funny because, we have an interesting history. So my first ever 200-hour yoga teacher training I did together with your wife.
Yeah.
I mean, it's such a small world. Yeah. And I feel like right around then, I mean, this was three years ago. I don't even remember talking to you about photography or anything.
I know. But it was cool, you know. I loved that workshop you taught. It was an immersion workshop, and I gained so much knowledge from it. It was just, it was packed. Everybody was so stoked, and the energy was really high, and it was really fun. So that was exciting.
So fun. I keep telling Bree, you guys have to take the family and come visit us in Aruba next, since we saw you in California.
I would love to. It's my dream to kind of get my two boys out and explore a bit more of a bit more of the world. So that's on my list.
A bit more of the world. You do a lot of exploring of the world already. So for anyone who doesn't know, say anyone listening who maybe doesn't know who you are, I mean, you're a photographer. You travel the world taking pictures for a living. I mean, it's a dream gig. How did you get started?
That's a great question. So I grew up in this small town in Central California, and you know, when I was young, all I really wanted to do was leave this small town. To anybody out there who's ever kind of been in that situation, you know the feeling of feeling a little trapped, right? And so I didn't grow up with a passport, never traveled anywhere, did a lot of art in high school, and what I realized was that I wanted something a little more immersive. I wanted like something that was like going to be allow me to be creative, but out in the field. And so I did a lot of drawing, did a lot of, you know, and I was stuck on the hillside somewhere in a studio, and I picked up a camera from my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, her mom, and I just was like blown away. I was like, this is this creative endeavor that can take me out in the field and it could be my passport to the world, you know. And I to be totally honest, I got started in photography for purely selfish reasons. I just wanted to fill my passport and collect a paycheck, and it really evolved from there.
Do you remember the first thing you ever, took a real picture of, like the first thing you ever went out and shot?
I think that one of the first things I took a real picture of was probably, like a still life, or something like really simple, like just a beach landscape. And I think that those were some of my first photographs was literally driving up the coast in California, going to go surfing and just taking pictures of the waves. And it was kind of the ocean was like my first muse. It was like my first canvas, so to say. And it's still, to this day, like the thing that I truly love photographing most.
Because it's ever changing. You think that's it? It's always, I mean, every time you take a photo of the ocean, it's always different.
I think that you never see it in the same light twice. And it's to me, like, I think some people see the ocean and it almost makes them feel a little like nervous because it's such a big, it's so big and it almost creates a barrier. But like, as I've gotten older and as I've gotten more comfortable and as I've really been taught a lot of things from the ocean, I've just realized how, like, what an amazing teacher it is, you know, like it's humbled me many times in my life. It's made me realize how weak I am. And it's also shown me some of the best times I've ever had, you know, and like sharing my love of the ocean with my family or with other people has been, it's brought me a lot of joy. And, but at the same time, I have this like deep respect for it. Like it makes me feel very scared at times. So I guess I just love that kind of relationship that I have. It's not cut and dry, you know? It's like yoga. Like the more you do it, the more you realize how little you know about it, how much you have to learn. Like I did a teacher training and I was like, I left feeling like, wow, I know nothing about this at all. Like I'm like a child. So that's kind of how I feel around the ocean, you know?
I mean, it's very, very humbling. I never grew up around ocean, so I've always had this kind of hesitant, not a big fear, but I'm always a little, very respectful toward the ocean. I'm not one of those natural water people who's just always surfing or always in the water. My husband is, though, and I don't know, he has respect for the ocean, but I'm always a little worried that, you know, he's going to do something kind of insane and stupid. Because I feel like people that grow up in the ocean, they start thinking, you know, that, oh, this is so easy. I just live here, you know? And
right.
I don't know. It's healthy to have a good dose of respect, I think.
I totally agree with you. It's crazy because I have those experiences too, where you get that level of kind of security, and all of a sudden it just puts you right back in your place. And that's kind of what happens. Sometimes growing up around something creates a false sense of security. And I feel that sometimes too, but that's what I love about it. I love it's a constant teacher. It's a constant source of inspiration too. So yeah, it's something that we all kind of are still just trying to evolve and learn what our relationship with the ocean really is about.
So that was a really, easy transition for you into surf photography since you grew up by the ocean. Was that how you really got started? When was that? I guess when was the moment that you realized that this is something that you actually might be able to do for a living, you know, more than just a passion or a hobby?
It's a funny one because people ask me all the time, like, what was your big break? What was the moment you knew this is what you wanted to do? And I tell people, I'm like, sadly, you know, there was never a big break. There was never a moment where everything felt like it was good and I was secure. And, you know, to be honest, like I moved into my car at 19 years old to pursue photography. It was a complete and total Hail Mary. I quit my job, I quit school, and I lived at poverty level for a period of time so that I could kind of make ends meet. And I would shoot literally anything. Like I would have shot, anything that anyone would have offered me. So I guess I felt like that has always sort of been something that I've considered is like, you know, I don't want a job that I'm not willing to sacrifice for. And I guess I felt really, I feel empowered by those experiences, those early childhood experiences. And it's not really something where I've been able to find a time in my life where I've felt like, oh, this is the career path for me. Like it's taught me a lot and it's presented a lot of opportunities and it's brought me a lot of joy. And as long as it does that, I'm going to keep doing it. And most importantly, as long as it keeps challenging me, I'm going to keep doing that. But there was never a moment where I've had this like, oh yeah, I know where the next paycheck's coming. Like as a freelance photographer, much like, you know, yourself and the fact that, you know, as, you know, a yoga teacher, someone doing workshops, like you don't know, you know, you don't really know if the, you know, the next year is going to be a hard year or a good year or whatever. So I've kind of tried to like detach from that a little bit and detach from that experience. And and that idea that like I'm making it or I'm successful, because success should really be defined by how much joy your job brings you.
Oh, definitely. So in those really early days when you said you would, shoot absolutely anything, was there ever a moment where
Yeah.
you felt like, oh, I'm paying my dues now? Like you had to shoot something that you really
Oh,
didn't want to do?
oh yeah. I mean, I've shot a lot of weddings. I shot experiences where like I would be, I mean, nothing wrong with weddings. I love shooting weddings. I'm just not the person. I'm not the patient person for that. I shot a lot of things where like nowadays I wouldn't even wake up for it. I would go out and literally spend every dollar I had on gas and sketchy Mexican food to drive up and down the coast and chase swells and stuff. And there was even times where like I would find myself out on a jet ski in the middle of the ocean trying to shoot this big wave amidst really sharky waters and just, scare myself out of my mind. It was terrifying. And, there's moments where I felt like emotionally scarred from it, but I was like, okay, this is what it's supposed to be. This is how it's supposed to happen, and it'll all get better. And it obviously eventually did get better, but I really paid my dues. I mean, especially like more of like my living situation, like I remember I quit my job and I was working at this magazine store, and the very next day I was back down in Pismo Beach, right where I grew up, right where I learned to surf, and I was like out on the pier trying to shoot pictures of random people surfing, and then running up to them on the beach and trying to give them a CD of photos for like $20. And that, it was pitiful, right? But I guess I love looking back at those early experiences, because when you realize how far you've come, you realize how much you're willing to struggle for something you love.
I mean, there's something so beautiful about that. And I think everybody has to go through that period of also, of a very humbling growth, that you have to really fight for what you want. I can compare that to when I started teaching yoga and no one wanted to come to my class. And I was kind of, living in the middle of nowhere. No one knew what yoga was. And I printed these little flyers at this. I snuck into one of the hotels and I borrowed a printer and I printed these little flyers for my classes. And I would hassle people on the beach, like, here's a flyer, come to yoga class, come to yoga. Yoga is great. Like a crazy person hassling people while they were trying to enjoy their pina coladas on the beach. But little by little, it actually worked. Like someone came and then they came the next day, and then little by little, I mean, it took a long time, but it grew. So I like that idea that it's not just this make it or break it moment, it's a big process.
Yeah. Well, and I think that with careers and with life, there's never really truly that like make it or break it moment. Like I had a full career change or a full career shift about 5 or 6 years into my career where by all means, people thought I had the dream job. I was, and I did, I was shooting surfing professionally, for magazines, and I was traveling all over the world, these, beautiful white sand beaches, and photographing the best surfers and the best waves. And although that was amazing, and I loved it, but I felt like there was a part of me that wasn't being fulfilled. And I think that a big part of that was that, I grew up in these wide open spaces and places where there's dirt roads everywhere and there's farm fields. And I had access to open beaches with not a lot of people. And I felt like very, very much like these touristy places where there was strong Wi-Fi and great food. And it was like the promise of adventure, but then you'd get there and you'd turn around and there'd be a high-rise hotel. It wasn't what I was being sold. And so I ended up gravitating towards colder climates, places that were more visceral for me because I had to give more of myself to be there, more planning, more time spent in harsh conditions. And that was truly, that was like the total shift for me. And so work, all of a sudden, it was like finally I had kind of made it. I had kind of like gotten where I wanted to be, and then I had to like start over. And I basically started at the bottom and started to go to these places that were just super, and a lot of scary experiences kind of resulted from that, just stuff, learn, like, the growth process of learning and whatnot. So it was kind of an eye-opener.
Because you hadn't shot that type of photography. I mean, those types of conditions before, of course. Was that a whole new thing? I've seen your movie and all of your Under an Arctic Sky. It's so impressive, and just watching this. So for anyone listening who hasn't seen this, you can find it on Netflix. It's incredible. So you go to the coldest parts of the world shooting surf in the midst of snowstorms and ice storms and the freezing waters and the things you go through just to, capture that wave. You almost have to question your sanity just a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. At times it's kind of it's an interesting one, because the reality is, like, we didn't really seek out these places where, like, it's not like we're seeking out these places just because they're cold. It was because we knew that the potential for amazing surf was there, and we knew that, I knew, when I was going to these warmer locations, that if I was going to find good waves, it was probably going to be somewhere like near the poles, where there wasn't a lot of people and it hadn't really been discovered and everything. So that was kind of what drew me to those locations. And I guess I never looked back. I started to go to Iceland and Norway and Alaska and the Faroe Islands and Russia and Patagonia and places like that. And I guess what I found there was this beautiful isolation where there was these beaches and waves and really landscape that hadn't really had their story told. And I felt really empowered in some way. Like that made me feel really alive. And I guess sharing those experiences with people has made me feel really excited about my work, and hopefully the fact that, many of these places are in need of protection, and that this work could in some way be a testament to how special they are.
And has there been a little bit of movement now? I mean, I'm sure it must be. Are more people seeking out these types of surf spots now since you started sharing them with the world?
I think so. I feel like in many ways, people's eyes have been open to what's out there, and cold water surfing isn't anything new, nor is it anything that's, totally foreign these days. It's pretty commonplace. But I guess I just felt like maybe I played some role in getting people out of their comfort zone and out of the safe and the routine and the familiar and the known, to seek out a part of themselves that's a bit unknown. And that's really special. I feel like to be able to foster that has been a truly a life goal, and just something that I feel like that's the higher calling. We're always everybody's seeking for that higher calling in their work. What is my purpose here? What purpose is to serve? And to kind of come to that place where you're cool, I feel like this is why I was given this, this talent or whatever it might be. And that feels really, really special to me. So.
You are listening to From the Heart, Conversations with Yoga Girl.
Do you brush your teeth at least twice a day? Do you brush for at least 2 minutes each time? Brushing your teeth is one of those healthy habits that so many of us are doing wrong, but we don't even know it. Now you can easily step up your dental hygiene game with Quip. Quip has combined dentistry and design to make a better electric toothbrush. Quip is the new electric toothbrush that packs just the right amount of vibrations into a slimmer design and a fraction of the cost of bulkier traditional electric brushes. Guiding pulses alert you when to switch sides so you can relax on autopilot while your teeth get the best cleaning. Quip also comes with a mount that suctions to your mirror and unsticks to use as a cover for hygienic travel anywhere, whether it's going into your gym bag or into your carry-on. Because the thing that cleans your mouth should also be clean, Quip's subscription plan refreshes your brush on a dentist-recommended schedule, delivering new brush heads every 3 months for just $5, including free shipping worldwide. Quip even gives you tips on oral care that you probably never knew. Quip is backed by a network of over 10,000 dental professionals, including dentists, hygienists, and dental students. Most toothbrushes don't get named one of Time Magazine's best inventions of the year, but Quip did. Find out why for yourself. Quip starts at just $25, and if you go to getquip.com/yogagirl right now, you'll get your first refill pack free with a Quip electronic toothbrush. That's your first refill pack free at getquip.com/yogagirl. GETQUIP.com/yogagirl. There's something about that, the idea of discomfort. And I talk about that in class a lot. Like essentially in our asana practice, what we do is we look for these places of discomfort. Where do I hold tension in the body? Where is it hard to dwell and to sit? Like, where is the work? Because if we remain in that very comfortable practice all the time, we don't evolve. We don't really go anywhere. And I mean, in this way, and sometimes, so I have to be, really honest. I'm a really horrible camper. Like I'm a very, I'm not like a camping outdoorsy person. I very much enjoy my comfort zone of like my house. And sometimes you see those photos in social media of someone who's sleeping in the back of their van, and you see their feet and like a hot mug of coffee, and it's just, they're camping somewhere. It looks so beautiful. And then I was watching your film, and just the behind all of that, like the actual discomfort, you know, putting yourself through that for the purpose of something really great. It wouldn't be the same if it wasn't hard, right? If it was,
I totally agree. I don't think there's this mindset sometimes. You really nailed it on the head, Rachel. Is like there's this mindset sometimes where like, you don't have to climb the tallest peak or surf the biggest wave or do something, extreme to in any way reach that level of discomfort or seek out that unknown. I've often told people that the deepest journey you ever take will be an internal one. It'll be the one that forces you to look deep inside yourself and asks the questions of like, why do I feel this way? Or why do I feel this discomfort? And yoga has been such a good tool for that, because it's forced me to sit in situations where it is uncomfortable, and you have to let your mind, you can't let your mind wander and think about something else. You have to kind of sit with it. And I guess for me too, what I've realized is that I've been able to kind of relate my experiences in yoga and meditation with my experiences out in the field. Standing on a beach, shivering, or sitting in the water, freezing, and it's a similar thing. There's not really much difference for me. Like both of them teach me things about myself that I wouldn't learn any other way. And maybe I'm just a stubborn student. Definitely am a stubborn student, but I love the fact that there's a place I can go in my head and in my body that can allow me to learn things about myself. Like, oh, why am I holding tension there? Why am I holding tension here? Why do I feel this negativity towards this person or that place or whatever? And you often find that it's an experience you might have had early on in your life that could have led you to feel that way, and or could have forced you to do that. And I just think like that's a part of us becoming more whole, complete people. And it's people like you that are helping folks to kind of come to that place. So it's not always about like having to live in the wilderness or in your van or out in the field. I think that you can have that introspective, deep experience by just every day of your life living normally. You just need to embrace that discomfort, like you said.
Definitely. I think there's something slightly dangerous to being too comfortable, right? We start to get a little bored with life. We start to get, boredom and too much comfort, I think, can take us some fairly dangerous places. And yes, it's true. We don't have to do crazy things, but I don't know. And everybody has that different practice. For me, it's always, so what scares me a little bit, or what do I feel slightly uncomfortable or hesitant to do, maybe in terms of business or, I don't know, starting this podcast was one of those things of like, oh, I don't know if I can do it. That seems like a challenging thing to do, but I guess I'm going to try and see if it sticks, And now it's my favorite thing.
That's so cool. And then that's a really cool thing, because you might have never known, and how it would have been if you didn't try. And that's always been a mindset that I've tried to take. Is like, I opened a gallery at one point, and I remember being like, oh, this is going to be a stress, and it's going to be so gnarly, and I'm scared. But I was like, if I don't try this, if I don't do this, I will always wonder what it would have been like. And that, to me, like that angst, that anger, not the anger, just like the thought. That would be worse than any discomfort, right? I feel like.
Yes.
And so I feel like we always have to kind of push ourselves just to try it. Even if you fail, like some of the best lessons I've learned in life have been from huge failures. And that's like, there's a lot of value in that.
Do you have an example of something you really put your heart and soul into and that didn't work out?
Yeah. Well, I have an experience I can share with you that people probably have heard. Some people have probably heard it. Some people probably haven't. But it's not so much a photograph, but it was a place. I really, when I sort of figured out, I like sort of unlocked the key to like being like, oh, this brings me joy. I want to travel to these remote places, and I love the planning process, and I love all these things about it. I'm so excited. Cool. This is what I'm going to do. So I figured that out, and then I started to kind of plan out trips. And what I realized is that early on, I wasn't really giving the time to like fully plan out these trips. I wasn't dedicating as much energy and time as I do now. I mean, imagine like going to teach a yoga, like a yoga workshop, a 3-day workshop, and like just kind of winging it, you know? So that was sort of what it was like. In the beginning of my career, I was like, oh, I'll figure it out. You know, I just sort of started planning and doing everything I could, but I wasn't really giving it the time and attention I deserved. And that really came to a head for me when I went to Russia on my first trip. And I arrived in the rural eastern Russia and, you know, at Vladivostok, just inside the Sea of Japan. Everybody got off the plane and they, you know, went through customs 1, 2, 3, 4, everybody with me. And I finally get to customs and I go up there and I give them my passport and they look at me and they look at my passport and she just starts pointing at the day on the passport, the visa, and I realized that my visa was 2 days off. I had, for some reason, even though I had applied for everybody's at the same time, mine wasn't the correct day. And so I was interrogated for 6 hours and they decided what to do. And then I was basically put into a jail cell for a day, 24 hours, and then deported to Korea after that. And so I spent this time in the cell, and it was a totally humbling experience because I'd never had my rights stripped from me like that. Like I was totally overwhelmed. And as much anger as I felt and as much, you know, whatever, like and it was kind of a, you know, gnarly experience. I just like realized that this was my fault. Like there's nobody else to blame. You travel in hopes that you're going to become this better person, this like different person, right? But what ends up typically happening is that you don't realize that process of becoming someone better, it usually starts before you leave your front door. Like it starts when you plan this out. It starts when you kind of give the time and dedicate the time to learn the customs and the language and to learn all the little nitty-gritty details that go into planning. And so I just skipped all that, and I thought I could do this on my own, and I made a mistake, and it was a bummer. And so that was a really big eye-opening experience to have in your early 20s.
What an amazing story to be able to tell too. Holy cow.
Yeah, it's kind of heavy.
I mean, and it's about that intention in it too. I mean, yeah. Are you a better planner now? Are you really, really, really? I mean, I can only imagine the time that goes into these trips before you actually step on the plane.
Yeah, you know, nowadays I feel like I dedicate so much time to planning. I mean, so much time to planning. It's a challenging experience because I guess I've kind of teetered the other way where I'm a lot more meticulous. Like every little detail has to be figured out and stuff. But you know, there is always an element of unknown, and that's important for trips. Like you can't figure out everything. And I really look forward to embracing those experiences where just something comes out of the blue and you have to figure it out. But yeah, it taught me a lot. You know, it also just taught me how to appreciate people's customs more, and it opened my eyes to the world, you know, a lot, because that was an experience that I don't really wish on anyone, nor do I feel like anybody needs to experience if they just spent the time and energy to think through the places that they're going to go.
Right. Actually, I've had a similar experience, but within the U.S., which a lot of people that are from the United States don't know what it's like to travel to the United States on a foreign passport or a foreign
terrible.
visa. I hear it's
awful.
So bad. It's awful. And I don't know, I had this thing where I guess I visited a country that was flagged by the U.S. Customs for some reason. So every time I gave any customs official my passport, they would put me in a room. And I would have anything from strip search to, I was stuck also for hours and hours. And I couldn't figure it out, and it kept happening again and again. And I was so angry about it that in the end I started harboring this resentment toward the entire continental U.S. I was actually so frustrated about traveling to the States that I'm like, oh my God, this country, they don't want me here. What's wrong? And then one day it happened again, and I was traveling through the States somewhere else, and I asked this official, this customs guy. I said, "What is wrong with me?" I said, "Every time I pass through, you stop me for whatever reason. What is wrong? What am I doing wrong? I don't want to deal with this shit anymore." And he looked me up and down, and he said, "Well, you don't really look like the type of person who stays out of trouble." And I was like, what do you mean? He says, "Well, like, you have dreads in your hair. You're a little too tan for a blonde girl. Like, you clearly show up with this attitude of like, you don't give a shit." He's like, "And that's a flag for me that you have this attitude. So maybe you should check that." And I was like, oh my God, he's 100% right. Like, I'm showing up with this, like I'm kind of inviting this energy of like, oh my God, I don't trust you people, so they don't trust me. So it was, I don't know, it was a big learning for me of, okay, how am I showing up when I arrive in the US? And then I changed some stuff and I softened a little bit. Yes, I put my hair up, and then they stopped flagging me, which was really good. But yeah, learning different cultures is a whole thing.
You are listening to From the Heart, Conversations with Yoga Girl.
How much easier would it be if we just called things for what they were? My skin recently discovered the most nourishing, goopy goodness that has ever been applied to it. Well, guess what this goop is called? Goop. Goop is my new favorite skincare ritual, and not just because of the name. The list of harmful ingredients that are present in most skincare products out there is alarming, but Goop steers clear of all of them. Other companies still test their products on innocent animals, but Goop never ever tests on animals. Goop founder Gwyneth Paltrow has finally delivered the skincare product we have all been searching for. If you're looking to set your skin up for a good day and take your own morning ritual to the next level, the Goop by Juice Beauty Exfoliating Instant Facial does exactly what it sounds like it should. It instantly brightens and softens your skin to reveal your glowing, smoother looking complexion. To follow up, the enriching face oil sinks in instantly, so it's never greasy, and turbocharges any moisturizer that you lay on top. Goop is much more than a skincare product. It's a lifestyle brand rooted in inspiration that spans travel, food, beauty, style, work, and wellness. Check out goop.com to inspire your lifestyle in beautiful new ways. Go online to goop.com/yogagirl to get these beauty products and many, many more. That's goop.com/yogagirl. Goop.com/yogagirl.
A question that came in, a couple of people asked me to ask you was, when you're on the road so much, especially when you encounter these stressful scenarios, because of course traveling, it's not all rainbows and butterflies, as everybody knows.
No,
do you have any specific...
wish it was.
I wish sometimes I had like a little telepathic, or, that I could just teleport myself places, especially now with a baby.
Yeah.
Babies and travel are like oil and water, I find. But do you have any practices that you always do on the road or that you take with you to help you stay grounded, especially in challenging travel situations?
I think that's a great question. And what I find is that everybody has kind of their own thing. For me, it's really about like what I do before I leave. Like, what I've realized, and I'm sure you have too, is that if you don't take time for yourself, you can't really give 100% of yourself to anyone. So for me, it's hard because before I leave on a trip, I want to spend time with my kids, my two boys. I want to spend time with my wife. I want to spend time at the office to get everything sorted out. But I also have to make time for me. And so there's been a lot of trips where I've kind of I've been so wrapped up in the planning and the this and the that I don't get a chance to go out and surf or go out and climb or go do yoga. And I find that I always have to dedicate a little time for myself before I leave. And so that alone helps a lot. And I some of the trips that I do they're ridiculously long. I mean, I had two trips that were 26 days this last year. And it was brutal. I mean, it was so challenging. And so I find that for me, one of the things that really helps me is trying to control what I eat. And I'm not saying like control like really, really, hamper down. Like I'm an opportunist. And so when I'm usually home, I'm vegetarian, vegan, about 99% of the time. And when I travel, it's more of an opportunarian situation where like I eat what's available, but I really try to eat as healthy as possible. And so I find that if I eat healthy, and the more healthy I eat, it just puts me in a better mindset. So I do little things. Like if I'm going to be in Vancouver or New York for a couple of days, this Monday I traveled to New York, and then I travel to Vancouver, and then I go to New Zealand. And so I'm already doing a little bit of planning to be like, well, where's a good yoga studio in New York? Where's a good vegan restaurant? and, where's a good climbing gym? And so I have all those mapped out. So if I have time and time presents itself, I'm going to do that while I'm there. And what I always find is that we get these windows of time where we have a bit of free time for ourselves and we just don't know what to do. So I've kind of started I have a Google map and there's like stars all over the world of just like, oh, there's a great restaurant here, and there's a great this here. And I feel like once you kind of do that and you start to tap into those communities, that's really helpful. I also find that I'm not a big runner, but finding myself going for a run, even if it's a mile or two, is really helpful. Going for a walk. It gives you the lay of the land, and it calms down your mind. Other than that, I think that, the music that you listen to, I kind of have I'm a creature of habit, Rachel. You should know that. So when I travel, it's like I usually listen to the same songs on the plane. I have a great, we call it the yoga playlist, but it's really just really relaxing music that me and my wife love. And so I have a playlist that I usually listen to, and it really calms me down and allows me to kind of think. And so I listen to that on the plane. When I'm in a hotel room and I have trouble sleeping, I listen to that. And I have this, I have all these weird tips things. So I do this one thing where I have say you're in a hotel room, and hotel rooms can be a little stale sometimes. They're a little not plasticky. They just kind of feel like everything's clean and it doesn't smell like your own thing. So I always bring this one cotton shirt from home. And what I usually do is I put the cotton shirt over my pillow, like a pillowcase. And so when I lay my head down at night, I smell sort of familiar smells from home, and that's just something that calms me down, because I have a hard time sleeping in various places. And so those are all little aspects of what I do. I mean, I have obviously my own yoga practice, meditation that I try to do. Sometimes the Wim Hof method has been a really beneficial breathing technique for just really getting you to a place of relaxation. But yeah, I mean, I think that any of those can be really helpful. The more sense of community you can find on the road, the healthier you're going to be.
That's such great advice. I love how specific your advice is too, because sometimes people just say, oh, take deep breaths, or realize just go with the flow. But this is actual things people can really use. I find that the smell is a really big thing. Bring a cotton shirt from home and make your own pillow. I always burn Palo Santo, and I know you're not supposed to do this in hotel rooms. You're not supposed to have open flames and whatnot, but I always do it when I come into a new hotel room.
Totally
I burn a little
too.
Palo Santo. Yeah. Because then it's familiar. It's so true. And the community aspect of it, I think, is so important. Because if you keep traveling to the same places, and you actually can make a network of community that you then can connect with from wherever you are, it's a really beautiful thing. But what about leaving?
People are critical, like you said, going somewhere and being able to connect with a similar person that you've seen months ago, or going out to get food with somebody, or going out to exercise or whatever, that really, I think, helps us. We're creatures that are meant to be together. So I think that's always been a really healthy thing to do as well.
Yes. But what about the other side of that? So what's it like spending so much time away from your family? How many travel days do you have every year?
That's honestly the hardest thing ever. And honestly, I don't even know the amount of travel days, because certain years, I can't really be I'm going to put a cap on it. I'm only going to travel, 50 days this year or 60 days this year. Last year was probably the most I've ever traveled in my entire life. And it wasn't because I wanted to, but it was because I had certain things I had to see through. I had my film that we toured across the world, and I promised myself that I would dedicate the time to really see this through. And so I've always been a fan of if you're going to do a project, really do it 100%. And it is the most challenging thing. And it's funny because, to really help answer this question, my wife should really be the one to kind of give her opinion and advice. But I found a couple tips and tricks that really help in sort of the relationship aspect of traveling that I think people might be interested in. And one of the things that I would suggest, because I've been married for 10 years. I met my wife in high school. She, when I was a junior in high school. We've known each other for 14 years, and for literally I've known her almost longer than I've been alive, or twice as long, right, or whatever. So or longer than I haven't. But she me and her, we communicate a lot. And I found that communication is absolutely, it's the root of everything. And if there's one thing that we've noticed is that when you text people, it is so hard to truly understand the tone of the voice, the cadence, how someone's feeling. You know, I don't think that texting is a super natural way to communicate. And so what we try to do is we try to limit the amount of texting we do when we're on the road, and just keep it to small talk, and then just find the time to talk on the phone, you know, and ultimately, you know, even if it's a couple of seconds or a minute or something, just to hear someone's tone of voice and to hear what they're going through and to understand them. And that, I think that saves a lot of arguments. And that saves a lot of miscommunications. And then, you know, with kids, you know, one of the things that's critical is like, if I always realize if I get home and my kids ask me, where were you? Then I've already failed, right? Like they should know where I am, and they should know because I should be actively engaged in making them feel a part of the experience. So when I was in India, you know, I'm taking pictures of monkeys and snakes, and I'm sending it to my son. I'm sending him videos so he can be excited about what I'm doing because that's what he loves. He loves animals. And I'm making sure that I'm doing my best to keep cell service when I can, or I have a sat phone so that I can make a call when I'm out of service, right? And just check in. I mean, those things, they're expensive at times, but I think that they're worth it for keeping the family engaged. And I love being able to feel in some way like they're involved. And it's not really about so much bringing toys back or bringing gifts back. I think that allowing them to feel like they were on that journey with you in some way is really important. So for me, those are usually like kind of my go-to things that I really try to do. And it's not always perfect, you know, and it's still really hard, but that makes a big difference to me.
And as it is right now, do you have a good balance here? Do you have a goal where next year you want to travel a little less, or everything is?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it is a goal. Okay.
Yeah. This year I want to travel way less. I want to, I'm trying to just only take on the jobs that I really am excited about doing. And I'm trying to be a lot more conscious about what I say yes to. And ultimately, you know, I started the year off at home. I was home through Christmas and the holidays, and I'm home till, you know, next Monday, and then I have to take off for a period of time. But yeah, I mean, that's the goal. I want to spend more time with the family, and I think that like if I lock down some like family trips, it really helps me to keep that schedule open, because the tendency, and I'm sure for you too as an entrepreneur, it's like you just want to fill up any holes in your schedule with work because that's how you make a living, you know. And I'm kind of the same way. It's like I want to like stay busy because, but I've realized that, you know, staying busy and being busy, it's not like a badge of honor. It doesn't really do anything for you. Being busy just means you don't have time for the things you want to do, you know. So
it's a mindset thing. It really is. I was having this conversation with a happiness researcher the other day that I'm going to have on the podcast in a couple of weeks.
Cool.
And we were talking about the idea of happiness and the importance of resting, and how that it's such a huge component. That's like one of the things that have been scientifically proven, that if you don't rest and restore your ability to feel joyful and, you know, happy about the little things in life, it becomes much harder. So then I was saying something. I said, well, I know I really deserve to rest because I did this and that, and I had 1,000 retreats this year and travel. And then he said, well, right there, that whole idea is what's wrong with Western society, is that we have to deserve to take a break. Like we have to work really hard, and then we allow ourselves to be home and do nothing or rest. But it's actually human nature that we should rest because it's part of being human. You know, we don't have to deserve it. We just can rest because we want to. And that was a big eye-opener for me, because I always feel like, oh, I can take a break, I deserve one because I have to work really hard first. But it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah. Do you find that you still have that challenge of like learning to when to say no and like when to say yes? Like have you been able to create better boundaries with yourself about accepting work and sort of turning down work and stuff like that?
I mean, it's so hard. I have to say, since having the baby, and simply because traveling with the baby is not something that I want to do a lot.
No, so
I
hard.
find myself saying, more yes. And people told me, oh, it's so easy to travel with her, especially when she's little. It's horrible. It's horrifying. It's the worst. I don't know why people would tell me that. Do you guys travel with the boys a lot too?
We sometimes, it was easier with one, but even one was not easy at all. Two becomes like really challenging, but we're lucky because they're getting to that age where it's easier. But it's so funny, like growing up, I don't think that I had as much. I didn't have an understanding at all. I grew up and I'd fly on planes and I'd see these moms with kids and dads or single parents, and you're just kind of annoyed. You're like, oh man, the baby's crying in the back of the plane. And then I had my own kids, and I was like, I have so much respect for any man or woman who has a child on a plane at all. Like I just like my utmost sympathy. Like I'm like, take my seat, whatever you need, because once you know what that's like, you're just like, oh gosh, I'm so sorry, and it totally changes your perspective because you know that you can have like an amazing, baby who's just like totally peaceful and they can just be having a bad day, and planes like really affect them, and that's a hard thing to deal with sometimes. So I don't know.
Yes.
I
don't know how people do it. I follow some people in social media who travel with babies, and that's just what they do, like traveling families and stuff. Yeah. I mean, to me, that seems like the hardest endeavor of all, actually. So I know this has affected everything for me, how I plan out my business and my work and trips and all of this, because I want to be home with the baby as much as possible,
right.
until she can communicate with me, if she's upset, and not scream for 12 hours straight on a cross-Atlantic flight. It's just not worth it.
You're so true. It's so hard, but that's one of the beautiful things that we kind of get to learn how to manage, like it teaches us a lot about ourselves as well. I feel like, having a kid and that's been a huge eye-opener for me. Like it's changed the way that I do everything. So I'm sure that for you, it's really helped you evolve as a person as well.
Oh, it is. And I find that I try to really take the learning from the hardest things. I feel like she shows me every area where I'm lacking, where I struggle, little personality traits that I have that are difficult. She pushes all those buttons so that I can learn how to become a better person. I really think that that's what it is, parenting. It's just evolving into something even greater, I think.
You are listening to From the Heart, Conversations with Yoga Girl.
It's well known that adding more fruits and vegetables into your diet is super important, but it's not always an easy thing to do. When it comes to eating more fruits and veggies, there's a no-brainer, no-stress choice. Get all of your superfoods super fast with Daily Harvest. Daily Harvest delivers perfectly portioned frozen superfood eats straight to your door with your choice of smoothies, soups, breakfast bowls, or plant-based sundaes. Delivery and prep are super easy and straightforward. Just place the single serving cups in your freezer until you're hungry, and then add water, maybe coconut or almond milk for extra creaminess, and then blend or heat. Smoothies are ready in 30 seconds, soups in 5 minutes, and overnight oats and chia parfaits are literally made while you sleep. Each cup is made from a yummy blend of fruits, veggies, and nutrients, always perfectly complemented with a superfood boost. Produce from Daily Harvest is organic and unrefined, and it looks as amazing as it tastes. You can actually see the whole ingredients when you open up the cup. Things like cacao nibs, chunks of mango, whole raspberries, pumpkin seeds, and coconut meat. Daily Harvest works closely with local farmers across the U.S. and freezes all ingredients at peak freshness to seal in the maximum nutritional value, unlike other fruits and veggies that are picked and packaged long before the nutritional peak. Daily Harvest is the fastest, most convenient way to up your fruit and vegetable intake without having to put in the work that usually comes with eating more fruits and vegetables. Go check it out for yourself. For all my US listeners, go to daily-harvest.com and enter the promo code YogaGirl to get 3 items for free in your first box. That's promo code YogaGirl for 3 free Daily Harvest cups at daily-harvest.com. daily-harvest.com. I
want to ask another question that someone sent in through social media, and this is, I think, maybe will spark a bigger conversation. I don't know how much time we have, but about nature preservation and activism, which I know is something that you're super passionate about.
Yeah,
specifically,
that's a great question.
Yes, I mean, someone or a few people wrote in about the national monuments in Utah that were reduced by the president of the United States just, I don't know, a couple months ago, which is the largest rollback of federal land protection ever to happen in the history of your country. And
Right.
I guess the question is, what can a normal, regular person, maybe who isn't a politician and who maybe doesn't even, have the ability to travel a lot, what can we as regular human beings and citizens do to help protect Mother Earth? I mean, wherever we live, doesn't have to be
that's a great question, and it's something I've put a lot of thought into, and I guess the way I see the whole Bears Ears National Monument situation is, in many ways, it's kind of a cautionary tale, because what's done is done. And at this point, I guess for me, I'm I think that in some way trying to fight against what already happened is probably not.
And what happened there? So for anyone who's listening who doesn't know, because this was a big deal.
Essentially, yeah, it's a really big deal. Essentially, President Obama, a couple of years ago, he turned this really, really large area. I'm just summarizing here. They turned this really large area in southern Utah into a national monument, and by giving it national monument status, it protects it from certain things. But at the same time, it also limits certain things that can be done. So it's a really complicated issue, because there's certain aspects where some of the towns near this national monument, they kind of started to really deplete and sort of die off because there's certain activities that couldn't go on there, and so it affects people living there. But then at the same time, it protects these places for potential drilling and potential, having their resources used and sold off and stuff like that. So I'm just summarizing, but ultimately, I think the key thing is that it's really, to me, about what the indigenous people wanted most, and what they were lobbying for, and the tribes that came together to protect Bears Ears. This was their hope that it would stay as a national monument, and this basically is the first time the Antiquities Act was designed to allow places to be put under protection, and this is the first time that it's ever been used to actually remove a national monument status. So people are on both sides of the coin are really in uproar, because some people feel like it's illegal, some people feel like it's not. It's definitely something that people haven't experienced before, because this has never been done. And it's a really complicated issue, because the thing is that the hardest part of it is that it sort of forces people to rely on good faith that if it's a national monument or it isn't, if it stayed as it was, this beautiful open access area to everybody, that would be great. But the fear is that since it's not a national monument anymore, that basically this land is going to be subdivided and sold off to the highest bidder, and that could be used for mining or oil or something along those lines. And that is kind of essentially what I think might happen. It's a really big fear for everybody, and it's a really scary scenario. And to me, I guess I've tried to look at this as I personally, as a everyday human who just really tries to leverage my voice on social media, I think that in many ways it's an eye-opener, because I knew about Bears Ears for years. I knew about it from climbing out there, and it's a really beautiful, special area, and there's a lot of people that knew about it. And one of the things that's kind of blown my mind is that in the last 2 months, 6 months, there's been this huge rally behind Bears Ears, huge support. Everybody's go to Bears Ears, protect Bears Ears. Where was that support 2 years ago? I feel like in some way we missed our opportunity to share with the world how beautiful this place was. And by doing so, we didn't gather the support we needed. And this kind of brings me to I'm just trying to provoke a thought here that social media has this amazing tool to enable us to share with people places that we love and places that we fear losing, right? But at the same time, if we're always so busy protecting places for our own use and not sharing them, then they can be put into a situation where maybe we want more people to know about these places. Maybe we want their stories to be told. And so for me, I guess I've always tried to use social media as a way. I don't really want to be the person ever to tell people what to vote for, to tell people what they should care about. That's not my place. I rather share with you what I fear losing and what I love most in hopes that you will go and experience it yourself and form your own opinion. And I think that that's one of the best ways conservation can really work. Because here's the harsh reality, is that as much as we want to talk about climate change, as much as we want to talk about glaciers melting, and I've seen it firsthand, it's absolutely, it makes me like weep inside. It's terrible. There are kids in rural Africa and people in China who are never going to care about things like that they're never going to experience or never going to see, right? And I'm just being honest, like, you can't force people to care about things that they aren't going to experience. So why are we talking about things like climate change and how it affects the glaciers when that's creating politically more of a wall than a bridge, right? It's not uniting us, it's dividing us. And so when I think about climate change, I think about what affects everybody globally. Smog and polluted water and, the air we breathe. That's something that everybody universally can really relate to. And so I think that I just want to find ways to create more bridges and less walls and ultimately unite both sides by speaking a language we both understand. And I think when it comes to Bears Ears, I would just hope that in the future, when there's that place that you care about and you love, but you want people to support and rally behind, like, I think that the effort should have been made a long time ago. And I think that it's a little bit of a bummer because had we have had the support we needed, we might not be in this situation. And had more people known about it, we might not have been in this situation. But it's that classic thing where, we don't want to see places get overcrowded or overused, but at the same time, you can't expect people to care about a place, to want to preserve a place that they never experience.
If they don't know it, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I know this. I know this so well, and it's living on a tiny island the way I do here in Aruba. It's something that comes up every single week when someone asks, "Oh, where should I go experience the most beautiful part of Aruba?" And I have my little gems, that I love because they are so quiet, and because no one ever goes there. And we see it really quickly here. If there's a deserted beach or a little quiet place or a cave, and then it kind of gets out that there's a gem. And unfortunately, what we see, which is super sad, is that there's a lot of tourists that come and they will litter and leave behind plastic. And it kind of creates this messy thing. So I can understand the decision of wanting to not speak of things.
Yeah, you're torn. You're totally torn because you don't know what to do. And you don't know whether to share it with people or to kind of hold it dear to your heart. And I struggle with that too. And one thing that they did at Bears Ears was there's a really awesome group. I'm blanking on the name, but there was a friend of mine who put it together. That they raised a Kickstarter to fund basically like a welcome center there, so that people that come there know how to treat it and know where to hike and where to go, because until now there's nothing there that can educate people on like how to sort of protect the land, right? So this is kind of a more
that's a great point.
Yeah.
There was an initiative just like that a few friends of us started here. So here we have these beautiful dunes, huge, big sandy dunes that are birds come to nest there, and turtles will come up to lay their eggs, and it's a really beautiful sacred space. And then these tourists will come to the island and they rent ATVs and they go across the dunes and kind of destroy these really beautiful sanctuaries for animals. And there's a lot of anger in the community. Why are these people coming here and doing this? But then, people don't know. There's no information anywhere. There's no sign. There is no, information center about how to behave in these sort of protected areas. So now they created them, and now people know. And it created a really big, without information, we can't really make that change, because I don't think anyone sets out to be an asshole. It's just.
I totally agree, and that's the hardest thing is like you can't blame people for things they don't know. And I've been in that situation. I've been in your shoes, and I've been the asshole. Like, I've been in both. And I think this is why, for all of us, we should strive to be a traveler and not a tourist, and somebody that comes to places with respect for the land. And, it's okay to make mistakes, but ultimately the goal is you should do your best to learn what you can do to just be more efficient in the future and to be kind of a greater steward of the landscape. And so I've had to learn the hard way many times, and it's kind of like where I'm at in my career now. I'm really trying to do a better job.
I love that. Be a traveler, not a tourist. That's a great... You should trademark that. That would make an awesome T-shirt.
Yeah.
Not a tourist. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna end with a really hard question, or I think it's a really hard question. I'm not sure.
Okay.
But I love it. Let's see. So, your all-time favorite photograph you've ever taken. So if you would imagine a scenario where all the hard drives you own, all the disks, all the clouds, all the storage of every photo you've ever taken, everything would go up into smoke, and you could only rescue one photograph, what would it be?
It's funny because I feel like in many ways it has to be just this one picture. It just because as much as I love all of the others, and when people always ask me, what's your favorite photo you've taken? I'm usually like, it was the last one I took because it's the one that is the most visceral to me. It's the one that's the most like real, and it's the one that I feel the most. But the reality is if I had to choose one, there is an image of that I shot in Alaska, remote Alaska, and I fell in love with this location. And I think what made it such a valuable photo, it's a picture of a surfer on a wave, and there's a big, massive, perfect volcano on it behind him. And the juxtaposition of the two, you have this beautiful wave and this huge volcano, and you can tell it's somewhere remote, really out there, right? That to me is like, that's the perfect photograph. It sums up everything I love about the natural world and my affinity for surfing, but it's how it came together. The amount of research, years and years of research and trying to get to these remote islands and finally finding access. We found a guy who was willing to let us stay in his house there, and we rented the plane that got us there, and we got to this island, and it was like I've never felt more harsh conditions, more brutal wind in my entire life. And ultimately, like, we sat through, one of the biggest storms ever, and it's called the Aleutian Islands, these islands off the coast of Alaska. And this place has been given the name the Cradle of Storms because it literally, like you'd hold your baby, it cradles storms. It holds them in and doesn't let them go. So it is known for like having about as bad of conditions as you can get. And when I was researching it, we couldn't really find any beautiful photos of volcanoes or beaches. It was like 50 Shades of Gray, just fog and just rain. And when we arrived there, I was really worried that we weren't going to see anything. We weren't even going to see the sun. And we had this one morning where it was just so clear, and frost was outside, and it was a beautiful morning. I'll never forget it. And getting to the beach, I still can't forget that feeling of seeing, the clouds part and this volcano just come out. And it was like, I knew right at that moment, I was like, this is why you go through all this. Like, I don't even care what photograph I get today. Like, just being able to see that and know that it's there gave me so much like hope and fulfillment. And I guess I think that photograph to me, as a photographer, as a creative, even as a yoga teacher, you experience this. It is really hard to feel validated in your work. It's hard for any creative, especially younger ones, to feel that like pat on the back, And I've learned that you can't rely on other people to give that to you. You have to get to a place where it's the photographs and the work that you do that gives you the validation you need. And that was one of those moments where I was like, all right, like, this is it. This is the validation that I needed. I know that I'm doing the right thing because this wouldn't have presented itself to me or to anybody without the effort and the energy that I put in. And this is a vision worth savoring. And so that photograph it just sums it up. It's everything. And and I really love it. So yeah.
I have to see this photograph.
Yeah,
I'm
I'll send it to you.
picturing it in my mind.
Yeah.
Send it to me, and then I'll use it to to post on social media when the podcast is out. That would be such a perfect
That'd be so cool. It's so great to chat with you, and thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're busy and you have a lot going on, and it's a real honor to be a part of this and just to watch your progression. Like I remember, those years ago, like being in that class with you, just like in awe of how just well thought out of a teacher you were, and now to kind of see you embark on this is really cool. Storytelling is like one of the best things I think we can pass on. So I'm grateful to be a part of this podcast.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode, and a huge thanks to my guest, Chris Burkard. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to listen and subscribe to other great episodes of From the Heart Conversations with Yoga Girl. You can find all of them on rachelbraithen.com, on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or anywhere you normally get your podcasts. And of course, don't forget to leave a review while you are there. Thanks to the people at Cadence 13 for their production work, and of course, thanks to all of my sponsors, Quip, Goop, and Daily Harvest. Please support them the way they support this podcast. I'll see you next week.